Hey everybody, welcome. We're really excited to have our three congressional candidates here with us tonight. Adam Murphy, Doug Crockett, and Joy Powers. Most of us in the room today and many Washington County residents we've spoken to feel that our government in Washington is broken down, that the current administration has let us down on kitchen table costs of everyday items like groceries, gas, fertilizer, healthcare, and a few other things that might be missing from Southwest Virginia, like hospitals, et cetera. We have an outreach program this year, so we're speaking to as many local residents as we can. What we've heard is they don't feel differently about Richmond and our representatives in Richmond, and even down to the county and town level. Our elected officials don't seem to be as concerned about what is important to the constituents in Washington County. Is interested in listening to inputs, whether it's about safety, protecting rights, maintaining our strong ag and farm roots, natural resources, tax rates, and even issues like food insecurity of elderly residents. Those are all things we've heard from people to say, I wish somebody would listen a little harder maybe. Fast backwards to 2010 when Morgan Griffith beat longtime incumbent Rick Boucher by pursuing strategies and focusing on issues similar to the ones I just listed for you. And then, as now, there is a strong anti-incumbent sentiment focusing on energy policies that actually protect workers, that add workers, protecting our rural roots, our beliefs, protecting our people and resources in the place we all call home. Whether or not we all hold exactly the same values and beliefs, we believe is less of an issue than the fact that in Appalachia, we care for our neighbors and we care deeply for our region. And based on the strength of those feelings for our region and our roots, CD9 is an area that once again is primed for change, no different than 2010. So with this in mind, I want to challenge our primary candidates today that the forum should be about positioning themselves as candidates who can lead these changes, who can best represent our rural Appalachian needs in Congress, and about who can best unseat Morgan Griffith in November. My encouragement to all of you is to focus on the job you'll do for us and for the region, rather than focusing on each other. Whoop. Sorry, Heather. Couple of housekeeping details. Men's and women's rooms are on the hallways on either side. If you walk out the back, there are exits in the rear and on the sides that are clearly marked in case of an emergency. I do want to, if you were able to pick up this flyer at the front, I do want to acknowledge not just our candidates and our moderator, Heather K. Evans, who is the John Morton Beaty Professor of Political Science in the Department of Social Sciences at the University of Virginia's College at Wise. Heather's the author and editor of 3 books, one of which, Competitive Elections in Democracy in America, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, explores both the negative and positive side effects of increasing competitiveness in, guess what, congressional elections. Sounds like good reading for this month, maybe. Our questions have been developed by our moderator and our committee members. If you filled out an index card, we've tried to integrate some of your questions along with the ones we were going to ask. Our goal is to maximize the time the candidates have for answering their questions, so I'm only going to do one other thing on this sheet of paper was our sponsors for tonight. That was myself and my other half, Lynn Waldron, Ed Davis, Anthony and Lori Flacavento, Mary and David Haviland, Suresh Iyer, Charlotte Parsons, Kip Post and Shanna Carrico, Dan Smith, Mary Lynn Tate, Tommy and Wes Waters. They helped fund sitting in this room today. Thank you all. So without further ado, I'm going to allow Heather to come up and introduce all three of our candidates.
I'm a little bit shorter than him, so we're going to scoot this down a little bit. Thank you all for being here tonight. As he mentioned, we have some questions that were developed by the committee itself. We also have questions that were sent to me privately, either through Facebook or through my phone, from many people who are in the room. And we have questions that were sent in tonight at the back of the room. So thank you to everyone who had a hand in these questions. I'm going to briefly introduce all three candidates, and then we're going to hop into some of the questions that the committee and citizens in this room are interested in hearing responses to. For the candidates themselves, the way that this will work in terms of timing is that the very first question will be a 3-minute question, but all of the rest of the questions are 2 minutes so that we can get to as many of these questions as we can. And we have a lovely timekeeper in the front of the room, and you've heard her say she's going to hold up times when it's like, there you go. So join me in welcoming these three candidates tonight. First, on the end, we have Douglas Crockett, who is a retired United Methodist minister and retired Virginia attorney. He is from Wythe County and a graduate of Emory and Henry University. He lived in Abingdon, Virginia after college and worked at the Westinghouse Wire Division plant in the marketing department from January of 1980 to December of 1981. He committed his life to working to serve people and went to seminary in 1982. His work has included director of a storefront ministry offering food, clothing, and after-school activities, a rural pastor during the 1980s farm crisis, resource person to churches confronting issues of justice and peace, legal aid attorney, prepaid legal attorney, and he ran his own law practice for 9 years. He has 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. His wife of 44 years is Rita Crockett from Buchanan County. So welcome, Doug. Seated next to Doug is Adam Murphy. Adam is a software developer from Roanoke County. Adam's family lost their century-old farm due to medical debt and years later their home in the housing crisis. He has lived the pain and frustration of a system that is rigged to keep the poor struggling and the rich flourishing. Adam is a strong proponent of Medicare for All, supporting rural health care, which includes incentives to bring medical professionals to Southwest Virginia, bringing economic opportunities to the region, building a strong labor force, improving infrastructure, protecting our resources, and strengthening agriculture where farmers can thrive, not just barely get by. Adam Murphy's campaign is creating a movement to end the neglect and bring about meaningful change in the district. Welcome, Adam. And last but not least is Joy Powers. Joy Powers is a 4th-generation cattle farmer, small business owner, and Bedford County mom running for Congress in our district. She was raised in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains on faith, hard work, and service, and she still lives and works on her family's 350-acre farm. Before public life, she ran her family's farm equipment dealership. She is also a mother to her son Eli, whom she adopted through foster care. As a community leader, Joy has taken on monopoly utilities to lower energy costs and fought to protect rural health care and the farmland that holds these communities together. Her campaign is built on the Home Plan, a rural blueprint focused on healthcare, opportunity, markets, and education. She is running because the people of Southwest Virginia deserve a representative who knows this place, respects it, and will show up and deliver. Welcome, Joy. Okay, so as I mentioned, this first question is a 3-minute question, and we are going to go in alphabetical order, and then the order will rotate as we move through the questions tonight. So this first one is 3 minutes. What are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Top 3 priorities if elected. Yes, I think the most important thing, I have a 3-point slogan for the campaign. And the most important part of that is prosperity. So and that has a lot of components to it. We have a lot of needs here in the 9th District. There are a lot of positives in the 9th District. As a part of this campaign, I've met a lot of good people doing a lot of good work. But we are a district that has 25% people on Medicaid. We are a district that has hospitals that are 4 on the at-risk list, or 6 now by the General Assembly's count. And we have maternity deserts in 11 counties. We have infrastructure problems, broadband problems. Broadband has not reached to the necessary places. So that's the main thing. Our median household income is $58,000 a year. Nationwide, it's about $90,000. Our cost of living is lower, but it's not equal to how far down we are as far as median household income. So my main focus would be on prosperity. However, in order to get to prosperity, I think we have to have some unity across party lines. So we have to get Republicans and Democrats to put aside the things that divide us, that benefit people in other places other than here, because we need to work on those issues, all of those things. And we can only get there to that prosperity that's going to last if we work together. And we're in a hyper-partisan environment, so we have to overcome that. That's going to start. If I win the primary, then I would have to reach across and get some Republicans on board. And then the other part to that 3-part slogan is maturity. So I am a progressive Democrat, so I believe in the things that progressive Democrats believe in, helping the little person, the marginalized person. And that's what I've been doing for 40 years, working with regular people. And so we have to have unity to have prosperity, but we don't want prosperity without maturity. We want to continue to work on those issues of women's rights, racial justice, immigration, getting a pathway to undocumented immigrants, to citizenship, those many things that we stand for, which also is prosperity, not just for the people of the middle and up, but the people at the bottom. And my focus would be on helping those folks, because I think that's what patriotism really is for me, is helping the least of these. So.
Hey, everybody. Great question. 3 priorities for the 9th District. This is actually a really fun one to answer because it's kind of, they ask you when you're running to try to figure out, encapsulate your platform into 3 bullet points, essentially. So this is, hopefully we've all done our homework. But this is a great one because the reality is really easy. For Southwest Virginia, we need to focus on 3 main things. Strengthening and protecting our rural healthcare systems, making sure our rural EMS are reimbursed at better rates, make sure healthcare in this country is treated as a human and an American right, and we guarantee healthcare to every American through a Medicare for all type healthcare system. We must strengthen the healthcare in our district. We cannot accept maternity wards closing. We cannot accept hospitals shutting down. We cannot accept losing our skilled services and having to drive hours for quality care. Unacceptable in the richest country in the history of the world. Step 2, or bullet point 2. The next thing we must do is we must revive programs that Rick Boucher instituted, like Showcase Southwest Virginia, in which we bring the job opportunities to the district. We don't wait for them to arrive. We go work our butt off and bring them here. Because you all know the greatest secret in the world is that Southwest Virginia is the best place to live in the world. They just don't know that yet. We need those infrastructure and improvements here, and by bringing these opportunities here, we can have an economy attached to the 21st century that is not just based in coal or agriculture. We can have an all of the above strategy. We don't have to just pick one or the other. And then the next thing is we must take on the corporate greed and the billionaire class and the Epstein class and the corruption that has broken our system today. The reason Donald Trump has any power is because the kingmakers behind him thought, well, we can get what we need done passed through this guy. We know he's not competent. Look at the reflecting pool. Look at Iran. It's obvious. The people of Southwest Virginia deserve better. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Provide health care as a human right, job opportunity in every district, and make sure we make the rich billionaire class pay their fair share and hold the greedy billionaire class to account, like Donald Trump.
Well, good evening, guys. I agree. This is a fun question. Although I'm going to cheat just a little bit, and I'm going to tell you my four priorities. Because my whole campaign, as Heather mentioned, is built on the home plan. And so I agree that we have to. This is an extremely consequential election in our lifetime. And so we have to send people to Congress who are going to codify Roe. We have to send people to Congress who are going to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We're going to have to send people to Congress who are going to pass a federal gerrymandering act. But we also need to send someone to Congress to represent this district who knows how to legislate for this district. And so that's what our home plan is. It was based, setting at tables and having long hours with people, in leadership in this district. And so our priorities are first healthcare. We know we have to fix our healthcare system. We know what this administration has done in the last year and a half. We know the Medicaid cuts that we could face next year. But we also know if we've received healthcare for very long in this district, we had problems long before that. So we also need to do things like fix the 340B funding. We need to fix the rural reimbursement rate to make things that actually work. We need to take and actually fund rural physician positions at a higher and an actual realistic rate. And we know that model works because it works over at the Appalachian Highland Dental Center perfectly. And so when we take that and we consider all of these things, then we have, O for opportunity. That's the jobs that we were talking about. Abington, in Washington County, we have the Inland Port project that's coming, and that is so exciting. But we need to be working with our manufacturers now to make sure that they are ready to take that on and getting them the resources they need to make sure that they can hook up to that rail line. And while we're talking about rail, we need to go ahead and bring that passenger line from Christiansburg all the way down. The other ones, of course, are M is market affordability, because we know that life is just extremely unaffordable here. We absolutely have to get a control on our energy prices, our grocery prices. We can do that by doing things like actually enforcing the meat packer laws that we are currently ignoring. And then, of course, education is infrastructure. I was talking to a young mom today. We were door knocking with her 5-month-old baby, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm just so scared about the schools." We have to send somebody to DC who could actually understand this district, but we also have to send somebody into our Republican neighbors' kitchen tables and living rooms to have these honest and hard conversations. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, and the beginning part of these questions revolve around your job as a member of Congress. And then later we will discuss your job as a representative of the district. And then finally, audience questions. So in terms of as a U.S. congressperson, and this question begins with Adam, which federal programs or budgets would you seek to protect, to cut, or to reform?
Ooh, great question. Okay. I think the first thing we do day one is we'll have to restore the Medicaid cuts. We have until January 1st of 2027 before the bomb hits us all. Sorry, but that's the reality. It's going to be very, very bad for many people. So we got to restore Medicaid. That would probably be an immediate budget that must be restored. I'd like us to update some of the funding around the VA, not cut our benefits, make sure that we change maybe some of the rating system. Seems pretty convoluted. There's a lot of things, I think, in terms of budgets that we got to address in the 9th District and beyond. Our military budget is a big one, isn't it? The Trump administration wants $500 billion military budget. And the reality is this military contracting budget is only benefiting the military industrial complex. That's an area where we really need to take a much more critical look at, make the Pentagon pass an audit, and make sure that we're actually spending the money on the proper things that we need in this district for our military and not just enriching some massive corporation. I mean, the problem in today's America is a lot of public funds seem to be falling into private hands, and they are not public-private partnerships. They are private extracting funds from the federal government. And that's not the way this partnership is supposed to be. So my biggest thing that I would probably want to look at besides healthcare would probably be military and technology, just simply due to my background. Thank you. Yeah, I think
Great question. I think that, as we all know, I like to make the bad pun that there is triage that we're going to have to address in our medical system. So we do have to reverse those Medicaid cuts. But one area that I think also needs a lot more attention is the Farm Bill that was just passed. So the Farm Bill is one of the most classic and largest pieces of bipartisan legislation that we've seen in America. And it used to be that Republicans and Democrats could meet at the table and agree on a Farm Bill, but unfortunately we're long past that. And so the Farm Bill is the biggest piece of nutrition and food access legislation that we have. It authorizes the budget for SNAP and WIC, and we have seen historic cuts to those programs. That is going to impact this district catastrophically. It already is. So we want to go in and we want to make sure that those programs are protected. We're hearing a lot of concern around the work requirements, the constant reapplication and things like that are purposely designed to literally starve our most vulnerable neighbors. And so we must correct that. And then furthermore, I think that as we look at the budget and we look at military spending, we have to be aware that, every president since 9/11 has left with more executive power than they came into the administration with. And so we do absolutely need to rein that in, whether that's a budgetary cap, or whether we're looking at war powers in other ways. But I do think that those issues are ones that we need to look at.
So that's a 2-minute question, because there's, under this administration, about every department there needs to be reformed, I think. As far as cutting, if it is at all possible, I think the defense budget should be cut, because that's where a lot of the, that's a big part of the budget. Another big part of the budget, which is not under a department necessarily, but is the debt that we have to pay on. So we would need to try to do something about that. But protecting the social safety net, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, that's what I would definitely want to protect. Affordable Care Act, I think that needs to be enhanced, need to be protected. We need to get the enhanced subsidies back. We passed a law in Virginia to do some of that, but I don't know if that's going to be enough. I haven't seen any analysis of that, but that would be important. Education, health, immigration, all of those need to be changed. We have a person over education and health who, well, you know who they are, and you know how they behave and what they do. And there needs to be a lot of reform there. We need to get back to really helping states with education. We need to bring back diversity, equity, and inclusion into education, stop trying to get certain books out of, and then immigration is a big one. Of course, United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, ICE, Homeland Security. I think there should be a pathway for undocumented immigrants into citizenship, and we need to work on that and make that a reality. Yeah, that's enough. There are more, I'm sure.
The next question is, which committee assignments would you seek?
Well, this was, I guess my last answer was a good lead-in. I think that one of the most effective committees in Virginia that we've seen that freshman congressmen and women have been able to work for Virginia is that on the House Agricultural Committee. It's very common for freshmen. I know Governor Spanberger was on that committee and achieved a lot of bipartisan work when she was in Congress. But for me, with my background specifically with not just agriculture, but for hunger prevention and things like that, I think that that is where I can make a meaningful impact here. Because again, that's not just agriculture. It's also land conservation. It's, you know, those diversity and equity inclusion programs that have been cut from every USDA program right now. We need to go through and restore those. And I think it really takes someone who understands and has utilized those systems to be able to actually speak to them and make effective change for this district. You know, another thing that I think that we need to be aware of is, you know, when countries like China, Singapore, and Japan all have national food security plans, that is not what our U.S. Farm Bill is. Our U.S. Farm Bill is a commodity management plan. So what I would like to see us do is actually follow follow the lead of some of our international neighbors and actually have a plan that says we need to have domestic food production at this amount in 2030, at this amount in 2040, and this amount in 2050. And with that, we'll not only guarantee a safer country, because a hungry country is a weak nation, but it will also be a huge asset in protecting our farmland from things like data centers and things in the future. But we have to have that data to be able to do it. Thank you.
So I would want to be on the Ways and Means Committee, which controls tax policy, because a lot of my strategy as far as to how to rid the 9th District of food deserts and housing, our affordable housing issues, and also possibly health care, would be by tax policy, by incentivizing people to take care, you know, successful companies to put grocery stores where they may not make a profit because they're making lots of profit elsewhere. And if they do that, reward them in their taxes. Same with rental housing. Reward people who are helping in places where there needs to be affordable housing by tax policy, and then penalize those people who are just raking in the profits and not helping out when that is to a level that it should be punished. So that would be where I would want to be. I have an undergraduate degree in business economics. I took accounting there. Concentration was in accounting. Took some tax courses. Went to law school. Took more tax courses. State planning tax courses. I still don't understand taxes well enough, but it's a complicated area. But I would like to be in there and be a part of that and try and help people in that way.
I would like to be on whatever committee lets me immediately regulate AI and data centers the fastest. But realistically, I'd like to replace Morgan Griffith on the healthcare subcommittee. I believe, you know, my entire campaign, I've said this to people before, I would trade away every aspect of this campaign, me running at all, if I could guarantee a Medicare for All bill got passed. That is my absolute highest priority. I think that is the most single greatest thorn in the side of Americans in our lives today, is dealing with a healthcare system that is for profit and not for people. There's an interesting thing about this, though, because none of us have actually ever been in Congress, so technically I don't know what committee I might be best on. So we've interacted with some people like Rick Boucher's group, and I'm hoping to talk with him if we win the primary to really get his perspective on where he thinks some of our best energy would be best spent, because I think he probably knows better than anyone else how we can all become effective in the 9th District as soon as possible. And so I plan to listen to what he has to tell me when it comes to that. But healthcare subcommittee would be my primary one, and I'd love to draft some legislation around Medicare for All. It'd be great to do tax stuff, to tax the billionaires with the wealth tax. It'd be great to update the Farm Bill. There's a lot of things we got to do because America's not in a good place right now. But healthcare.
Okay, the next question starts again with. Sure. Love it. Okay, the next question begins again with Doug on the end. What recent vote in Congress do you agree or disagree with, and why?
Trying to think of that recent one they had. But the War Powers Act vote, I would disagree with. I think they should have called an end to that, to the war. It escapes me as far as, I know there was something else, but it's not coming to mind. But that would be a significant one, I think. I think the War Powers Act, I understand how we got to where we are, because the Constitution makes the president commander-in-chief and then gives Congress the power to declare war. And so we have this strange cooperation where the president can go to war without Congress declaring war. But he has 90 days to do that, or 60 days, and then that can be extended to 90 days to wind it down. But I think this war, the president ran on not having endless wars. This may not be an endless war, but it is a needless war. We're getting nothing out of it. People died, which I think is a terrible tragedy. And I think that's all on us as citizens of this country and a democracy. We elect our leaders, and we elected a person who is just very reckless. And he's shown that in so many different ways, and he showed it by going to war. And I hesitate to call it a war. It was just an attack, an outright attack on another country. And so that would have been a vote that I disagreed with, and would have voted in favor of stopping the war.
I hate to sound like an echo, but yeah, there isn't very many votes that this Congress partakes in that's particularly inspiring. This particular one that is good, that was recent, is the War-Iran Resolution Act that they were able to get passed, even though Fetterman still voted no. That's a good thing that we're not trying to continue this conflict, but it took 100+ days and crazily conciliatory surrender from the United States to even get to a point where Republicans realize maybe we should use our congressional authority and stop this. That's unacceptable. I've been canvassing today. I was out in Damascus. I talked to a whole bunch of conservative people as well as Democrats. And I can't tell you how many times the Iran war comes up as outside of data centers and AI. One of the most unifying things right now is telling people we were going to have to pay. We were at war for over 100 days, over $1 billion a day, so more than $100 billion that we've spent. What would $1 billion of those dollars have done here for Southwest Virginia? How many hospitals could we have kept open? How many schools could have been kept from closing? How many people could have gotten the health care they deserve? How many people could have gotten the skills or started the job here? How many people could have been able to get a home? People are listening. And this is a great opportunity right now for the Democratic Party to catch people. The Republican parties are shooting themselves in the foot. Great. We have to show them that we will be better, that when you give us the keys to represent you, that we are going to bring accountability back to the system. People are tired of this. They're tired of their system not representing them, not representing and investing in their communities. We have to get back to ending these wars. So that was a good resolution act, but it should not have taken 100 days for us to get there. It should have happened on day one, and Congress should have been like, you are not allowed to do this. And then, if you elect me, I promise you I would have been trying since day one to stop this. So thank you.
I think that this is probably the most ineffective Congress that we have ever seen in America. Mike Johnson is the most incompetent Speaker of the House in the history of this country. And so there's a lot of things that we should have voted on that we haven't. There's stunts that they pull. I will say I was excited about the Bipartisan Housing Act that we just got passed. And then I heard today that Trump is holding it hostage until the SAVE Act has to be passed. And so when we actually see that, when we see something bipartisan work, and then the president says, no, we can't do that. We need to be pushing. That's what we need, a better representative to be able to fight for Southwest Virginia and not just say yes, sir, to President Trump. But furthermore, I think one of the most disappointing just things that I have seen in my lifetime is the way Congress has handled the Epstein files. And I think that we have stopped talking about that way too soon. As a mother, as a woman, I cannot believe that we are continuing to allow anyone on either side of the aisle to perpetuate and to use these, not just children, but also use them as weapons. And I think that that is something that we have to be better than. We have to be better than those people in Congress. We cannot lie. We cannot do those things. And I do think that Congress has to be held accountable. If they're in the list or if they're aiding and abetting, we absolutely have to have justice for those victims, and it needs to be a priority.
The next question, what issue would you take a stand on, even if it cost you politically?
There's honestly a lot of those in the 9th District. I've had them ask me directly to my face multiple times. I'm not going to back down on trans rights or human rights. Not going to back down on that. I'm not going to back down on believing that Roe v. Wade needs to be codified via legislation at the national level. And the ERA amendment must be added to a 21st century Bill of Rights. That healthcare is an American and a human right, and that everyone in this country deserves it. I'm not going to back down. Thank you. I'm not going to back down on many of the beliefs that we have as Democratic Party. Our issue isn't that our beliefs are bad. Our issue is that we don't communicate them properly to people. When they ask me about transgender rights, you know what they ask me about? They say, how do you support boys in girls' locker room? And I tell them, I don't. I support people being who they are and us allowing them to live the life they deserve to live in this country. And I don't believe that the federal government should get involved in those decisions. If a sporting organization says it's good, then why the heck do you care? And you know what they bring up? They're like, well, how do you feel comfortable about that? What's going on in New York? And I say, well, what's going on in Southwest Virginia? What are we doing for us here? They know we've been neglected. Talk to them about the economic reality. You'll get them on board. We cannot afford in this moment at all to back down from what we believe. In fact, we have to lean into it and say it proudly. I've gone to the coal fields. I've had a guy named Don who thought when I told him Medicare for all was the deal, he's like, I don't want any illegals to have it. He now has my sign in his yard and he's going to vote for me. Change can come, but you have to show up and talk to these people to change. We can't keep hoping from talking from the pulpit or online that we're going to reach these people. We have to go to their communities, knock on their doors, and say hello.
What a wonderful thing it is to be in a room of people who believe in human rights. So let's start with that, okay? I think that the minimum requirement for us up here is that we all have to loudly be able to say that we support the gay, trans, LGBTQ community. We do not think that legislation or politicians belong in their healthcare or their decisions. One issue that I've gotten some pushback on from Democrats has been the presence of ICE. They said, you shouldn't talk about ICE. Don't talk about ICE. And I said, why? I said, well, because my Republican neighbors like them. And I said, well, then you're having the conversation wrong. We should not, and that is something that we have to be able to say. We do not believe in surveillance, and we do not believe in the military being used against American citizens on our own streets. And so the issue here in the 9th is that we have a wonderful community. I've lived here my whole life. I love these people. And guess what? I believe that there are good people here in this district. But for some reason on voting day in previous years, our percentages come out wrong. So that is the job at hand. It's not to go and it's not to tell people that their thought is wrong. It's to go and have those hard conversations. And that's what we've been doing. You know, I was the chair of our local county fair. Okay, and so we revived it back. It was a $500,000 a year economic impact. It was free gate to make sure it was accessible to everyone in our community. And a few years ago, I took the stand to banning the Confederate flag. The local GOP took out a letter against me in the newspaper. And you want to know how many people cared? None. Okay? So sometimes we need to be able to take the stand.
So as I interpret the question, it's about taking positions that would cost us votes. And so what I take that to mean, it would cost me votes with the people in here. Any vote you take, any position you take is going to cost you votes somewhere. There's probably no issue, maybe data centers, no other issue that everybody or majority of people, there's always going to be some division. So, I would stand, and my way of looking at this is we have to win over some Republicans. I'm not going to give up progressive priorities, but I'm going to speak of them as their priorities and that they're more important, but not where we get to the opposite corners and we yell at each other and call each other names. Conservatives may have some legitimate concerns. Let's see how we can help you deal with that. But this is the priority. Women's rights, the right to choose is a priority, and the environment is a priority. But we can talk about whatever your concerns are on the other side of that issue. But as far as this crowd, what you might disagree with me on are some of those things that people use, and they're just kind of catchphrases like a litmus test, which is abolish ICE. I don't know that we should abolish ICE. ICE should not be doing what it's doing, but maybe it could be transformed into something else where it would help immigrants, undocumented immigrants that are here. So I don't just jump into that and say, hey, we're going to abolish ICE. We could reform it, we could change it, we could give the money to someone else. Maybe abolish it as well. And then Medicare for all. I don't know that that's the best route to go. I believe in the ACA. I think where we were with 8% uninsured people with the enhanced subsidies was a good place to be, and 60% approval rating in the nation. Medicare for all does not have that. We don't know what that's going to look like, but I would support it. I think it's a good, could be a good thing if we could work out the kinks.
Oh, actually, yeah, you are.
Okay, keep it.
Okay, and the final question, which begins with Joy Powers. How will you measure whether you are succeeding? And this is the final question under Congress, right? So when we're thinking about the job as a congressperson.
Great question. I think that in Congress, we've forgotten that we say Congress, but it's truly the House of Representatives. Who we're sending is here to be a representative in the House of Representatives, and it's our job to represent the Ninth. My priority is to making sure that our healthcare and our hospitals not only stay open, but they expand. My priority is making sure that our education system is funded and protected, not just with the formulas they use in Northern Virginia, but to actually go and make meaningful change to infrastructure change. The thing about being in Congress, if you want to go and you have to kind of make a choice. You have to decide if you are going to be worried about being elected for your second term, or you have to decide if you're going to serve. My goal is to go to Congress and to use those 2 years to the best of my ability to make sure that Southwest Virginia is a better home. And that means being accessible, being accountable, making sure that we are in constant communication with our voters, making sure that it's not just Joy Powers' idea, but it's making sure that my job is not to come in and be the shining knight for CD9. My job is to go and to work as hard as our community leaders here in this district have been working into making sure they have the representation that they've deserved, and they just haven't, quite frankly, since Congressman Boucher was here. Thank you.
So I think the question was how we would measure whether we're being successful, and I would agree with Joy on that. I think it's up to the people, a big part of it. So we would need to have contact with the constituents. on a regular basis and get feedback. Because that's what I hear most from people, is that, they don't see Morgan Griffith. He doesn't respond. He's not around. And they want their representative to be available. So, and I think a part of that would be hearing how you think I'm doing. And what I would want to do on a personal level is to introduce some legislation, which I don't think Morgan Griffith's done in a long time. He says he's co-sponsor of things, but some of the things he's co-sponsor on is like 100 representatives are also sponsoring it. And so he just jumps in on it. So I would want to be trying to introduce some legislation. I would want to try to build a network with some people and other representatives so that we can work together, because I think that would be important to trying to get legislation passed, is that you have some people who you can go to, who you can talk to, have some similar common interests. And that would, a part of that would be the representatives up and down Appalachia, because I think we have some common concerns. And so I think we would have some common issues, and hopefully we could work, Democrats and Republicans, together to deal with some of the issues that we have. And then the fourth one, and I know I'm serious about this, it's just how tired I am, because I want to work very hard, and I'm used to working hard, and so I want to work tirelessly and be at it. And I know it's every job that I've ever taken part in, whether it was volunteer, something on a honey-do list, or a job itself, it's always harder than it looks. So I know being a representative in the House of Representatives is going to be a very, very hard, grueling task, and I think I'm up to the task, but I would work tirelessly at it.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. How will you measure whether you are succeeding?
Great question. I think it's rather simple. It really just depends on if we make the daily life of everyone who lives in this district better. Do we make it so that way your health care is easier to access and a right guaranteed to you? Is it able that you're not able to have to travel to Tennessee or North Carolina to go get health care that you desperately need? Are people getting paid more? Are people getting enough job opportunities in all of our district? Have we moved away from economic engines that are the power plugs of Nova and elsewhere and built up the engines of Southwest Virginia just by itself? That's how I'll know we're succeeding. And obviously, if I win, then I'll really know we're succeeding. But we really have an opportunity here when we're in this chance to deliver for the people of Southwest Virginia. And I think it's really easy. We'll know we're succeeding if we win and if people reelect us. It's really that simple. That's the whole point of the Congress. It's supposed to be, well, I didn't really like you after 2 years, get the heck out of there. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people who've been putting party over country. And we need to start putting our country and our community, our people and their families before party once again.
Okay, now we're going to transition into the questions about being a representative for the 9th District. So the first question goes to Doug Crockett. How would you help create jobs or support local businesses here?
Okay, so, we do need more jobs. We do need a more diverse job base. So I think one area that I would want to focus on would be the places where the coal mining areas, where they're losing population. We need to focus, I think, there first. The growing sectors of the economy are healthcare, construction, data centers, franchising, and professional, technical, and scientific jobs. So I think, we need to try to attract businesses of that nature here. One of the things that, all of these issues, a lot of these issues are related. The governor recently said that in order to support a growing economy in Southwest Virginia, we need at least 8,600 more housing units. So we need to focus on that. And so it's a matter of, I think, an investment of dollars into the area. I think, what happened where we trace back the loss of infrastructure, or the poor infrastructure and the loss of jobs, is that companies came in, they took the minerals, they took the timber, but they did not invest. And so when they left, there was nothing, a diverse job base. And so I don't think that's asking Congress or the government, federal government, for a handout. It's asking the federal government for justice, to invest where it allowed companies to come in and take those resources without investing. And so with that investment, then we can try to build up the economy, grow jobs in the area and employment in those areas that I spoke of.
So my plan's rather straightforward. It's the revival of Rick Boucher's. That's why we want to call it Showcase Southwest Virginia again, because it worked. But I'd like us to triple the economic opportunity in many of our counties. Now, in some places, maybe like Montgomery, that might not be as possible, but all throughout coal country and Southwest Virginia, there's a lot of need. We need to connect our communities to the 21st century economy. That means EV motors, that means windmills, solar panels, that means computer chips, that means the future. Not just relying on what got us here, but accepting that we're opening a new chapter in our economy, an economy that is connected to multiple industries: agricultural, technological, industrial, manufacturing, transportation, tourism, and ecotourism. We need to have significantly more opportunities in this district. And that's what Showcase Southwest Virginia is all about. The goal here is to recreate the ladder of jobs. That way we don't just have our initial starting jobs and entry-level things and a gap between our skilled labor jobs. And we have to rebuild this in many industries. That's okay. That gives us a great opportunity throughout all of Southwest Virginia to bring new economic opportunity to the region. And I think that's a really exciting time, because there's a lot of changes in the world. Things like drone technology in our military, agricultural standards are changing with climate change. Our district can be the leader in those industries if we but have the vision now, just like Rick Boucher did. That's why we're bringing back Showcase Southwest Virginia.
So this actually might be the most commonly asked question in the ninth, is what can you do to bring more jobs here? And so thank you for whoever asked it tonight. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about, because there is so much opportunity that we could do better here in the ninth. So first and foremost, we have to have the infrastructure in order to bring industry. Industry brings jobs, but if we don't have the infrastructure needed. I was just talking to a few folks outside. Again, I'm going to keep talking about rail, because that's the infrastructure that we have here in Southwest Virginia. It's egregious that they're actually ripping up rail tracks over in Buchanan County when we don't have adequate roads to bring transit and opportunity in. So we need to make sure that as we, continue to push to expand passenger rail, as we know the inland port's coming, we also need to make sure that we're going through and we're creating opportunities for our local manufacturers that we already have. Because what unfortunately has happened over the last 10 to 15 years is almost all of the grant dollars that the federal government invests back into businesses, our tax dollars, they're going to companies with 700 employees plus. It's almost impossible for small businesses in our communities to access the money that we put into the federal government to grow our communities. And what's more interesting about that is those small businesses are actually statistically proven to last longer and invest more back in the economy in their community. It's actually pretty simple. Another thing that we absolutely cannot overlook that we hear every single day is we have to find childcare solutions that work so we can make sure that moms can get back to work. Thank you.
Okay, the second question goes to Adam Murphy.
Okay.
What is your plan for lowering costs for constituents in this district?
Ooh, okay. There's a lot of reasons and ways that we can do that. Let's talk about groceries. We got to rebuild our local food chains. Joy talked about it a little bit with the Farm Bill. There's a lot of things that our Farm Bill does need to be updated on. And we cannot keep benefiting the largest manufacturers and farms in our country. We have to switch the Farm Bill back into an opportunity to being economic development that benefits small family farms. Part of that would also include legislating cannabis at the federal level, removing those restrictions so we can bring it back as a cash crop. What was the question again? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No worries. What is your plan for lowering costs
Okay,
for
thank you.
constituents? Yes.
So that's one aspect. There's the group called Appalachian Highland Housing Program that's bringing this really cool housing program out, which I'd like us to do now after groceries for homes, to get people in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house for $220,000 or less. These are really big opportunities. We need it for workforce development. We need it for people that own a home. And we also need it for our public housing authorities. On top of that, we got to address healthcare costs, right? Well, can you guess where I'm going to go with that? It's going to be Medicare for all. Because in a single-payer, universal healthcare system, your taxes pay for your healthcare automatically. You all already pay the Medicare tax. You'd already be paying that anyway. You just now can go to the doctor and not be told, that operation costs $10,000. It'll just be, hey, you're an American, and you get this. There's a lot of things I think we need to address. Energy is another big one. Data centers is actually really connected to that, because if a data center comes to town, no matter what happens, your power bill is going to go up. So we really need to limit these and increase a federal guideline that makes these data centers have to pay their full share as they come into town. And we can reduce costs by creating electric co-ops to take on AEP and Dominion Energy. Thank you.
Ask it one more time, please.
Sure. What is your plan for lowering costs for constituents in this district?
Absolutely. So chaos drives cost up. I think this administration has taught us that. But there are some concrete legislative things that Congress needs to address in order to bring prices down. And of course, one of those is food. So we need food access. So obviously we need agricultural production. You know, the administration did just announce this huge effort supposedly into investing in more localized meat packing and things like that. Well, we need to make sure that those producers actually, that's a competitive market for them. So it's not just quite such an easy fix. But, you know, I still think back to when we were over in Russell County and I was listening to these two ladies and they were talking about how they were going to buy their bacon. Because in a lot of the 9th District, Food City is your only option. And believe it or not, even within that chain, bacon prices can jump from $3 from one store to the county over. And so I kept thinking about that. Here's these elderly women who have gone their whole life and are having to count their dollars to literally be able to afford their bacon for the week and rotate it. And so we absolutely have to have consumer protection and buyer protection put back in the grocery system. Another thing that I think has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed soon, is the automated and use of AI to be able to adjust the pricing scale based off of how much you're able to afford. So they're actually putting digital price tags into our grocery stores, which I think should be federally banned, that are able to assess whether, well, it's after work, so this person is probably employed and not retired, so let's charge them more. Or it's a really hot day this summer, let's jack up the prices on ice cream and bottled water. These are things and systems that places like Kroger, Food City are already looking and investing in. And so we absolutely have to have a Congress who can stand up to that technology, because if not, the cost is going to continue to rise.
So the federal government has kind of two ways of controlling inflation. That's monetary policy and fiscal policy. So monetary policy has to do with the interest rates and the Fed, so Congress has not a whole lot to do with that. But fiscal policy, Congress does have something to do with. It's how much we spend as a federal government can increase inflation, and then lowering taxes can increase inflation because it puts more money into the economy. So the problem with that for me is that if we keep spending down, I think there's a lot of things we need to spend for. And what this administration did with the giant gruesome bill was to cut taxes on the wealthiest at $3 trillion and cut spending. So if it had been done the right way, that might have been a good plan. But it did, I think, it could have been one of the causes that we have inflation. And then, of course, try to stop the president from raising tariffs, try to stop him from going to war, and necessarily both of those things were terrible for inflation. And so we need to, we can't, Congress is not the president, but we can hopefully put pressure on the president. But if we have a Democratic majority, we would have more leverage to try to rein him in. But and the 9th District, I think, could be crucial to that. So it's important, I think, that we plan to vote, that we believe that we can win, that we work as if we can win.
The next question begins with Joy Powers. How will you keep in touch with constituents after the election, both critics and supporters alike?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question because I currently have a stack of letters that Morgan Griffith has sent back to people across the 9th District, copies of them on my desk at home. And I think he gives us the great example as to how not to communicate with constituents. So first and foremost, it used to be, and what I love about Congressman Boucher's legacy is that everyone has a positive Congressman Boucher story, regardless if you're a Republican or a Democrat, because he was a servant before he was a Democrat. And I think that's what we have to get back to. And so first and foremost, we approach every constituent like they deserve to be served. And one thing that I say is I want every person in the 9th District to feel like they have a representative that's proud to represent them, regardless of who they are. So keeping those open lines of communication, available, but also making sure that we have rooted people in our team and our leadership that know these communities, who are in dialogue constantly with these communities. And I think that that's critical. Something that we've modeled in our campaign is to make sure that, we have representation from all across our district in every decision that we make. And I think that is what continues is to carry this forward, is that we've seen such legislative neglect. We've seen such apathy in communication with voters from our current representative that it's not just we have to be better than that. It's we have to actually communicate the way we deserve. And so obviously that means through regular contact, regular town halls in every community, regardless of how many voters are there, we show up where the people are, no matter how many. Thank you.
So was it constituents and supporters?
It is, how will you keep in touch with constituents after the election, both supporters and critics alike?
Oh, supporters and critics. Okay. I think the main thing is hard work. It's to be on the road, to be traveling, to be going everywhere in the district. And I am not averse to hard work. I'm not averse to driving long distances. And so that would be my plan. And also, I think my wife and I plan to settle in Washington County here in Abingdon. So we would be in a good location to travel in different parts of the district. I grew up in Wythe County. I'm currently there now, which gives me that ability as well. So being centrally located would help. But I think it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of meeting with people. And as I said before, I believe in unity, and I believe in talking to Republicans, critics. I'm sure I would have some critics who are Democrats as well. And I'm not afraid to listen. Listening is a big part of representing people, hearing what your concerns are. The only people that I have problems with are those people who are so far right that you just can't talk to them. And I've run into a few of those, and you just have to turn around and say, okay, we can't dialogue. And, I won't tell you what else I say, but so there are times when that's impossible, but I would, 100%, 200% try and meet with people, talk to people on the phone, read letters, not leave that to other people to do on my behalf. Of course, there would be some of that, but I believe in hard work. As I said, I was bivocational, so I was trying to work in law full-time and as a pastor part-time at times. and running and working is something that I just do.
So my standard is, once again, trying to be the Boucher standard. I was told that he used to have 2 town halls in every county and committee all across the 9th District. I plan to do the exact same thing everywhere. And I've talked to many Republicans, conservatives, independents, Democrats, and people who don't always agree with what I say. I make it very easy. I say, you know, we're not always going to agree on every little thing, but I am making you a promise that we can have a conversation about it, though. Something you don't even get from your current representative in Morgan Griffith today. The goal is to be the opposite of Morgan Griffith. I mean, literally, right? I want to be as accessible as possible. That's why when I hand you my business card, you have my phone number. It texts to me. It doesn't go to anyone else in the campaign. It goes to me. Don't call me at night, but you can text me. My email goes to me because I think the representative must have a personal relationship with the constituents. We obviously need to have a good staff that can be in places where I can't every time. And it needs to be from people in the 9th District, from Southwest Virginia. But everybody on our campaign is from Southwest Virginia. We are speaking to these people where they're at. I have this awesome hat with me here today because I was up in Oakwood, Buchanan County, where a local UMWA of the 2232 offered me a little hat switch just because he liked that I showed up in his community, a community that Morgan Griffith had never shown up in. That's something I hear a lot, that Morgan Griffith has never been here, but you showed up. That's what it means to be accessible. You got to show up everywhere, and we need to be the opposite of Morgan Griffith. That's what Southwest Virginia deserves.
Okay, the next question begins with Doug Crockett. How are you qualified to speak for the 9th District?
Well, I guess the 9th District will decide that ultimately, but you know, I can tell you who I am and what I am about. I know what it is to represent people. That is a part of being a pastor. That is also a part of being an attorney. You're not the center of attention. Your client is, your parishioner is. So when you stand in the pulpit, you're representing someone else to the people. When you pray for somebody, you're representing them to someone else. When you go into a courtroom, you're representing someone else. I have lived struggle myself, and I think the 9th District, the identification of the 9th District is that we are a, often forgotten, left out. I know what that is to be on the bottom looking up. Grew up economically disadvantaged. I've been working with economically disadvantaged people, and this would be a part of that. Not saying that the whole district is economically disadvantaged, but we're the underdog, and I like to go to bat for the underdog and try to win the case or help the person or see them come out on top. And so I have spent 40 years doing that kind of work. I think this would be an extension of what I've been doing for the last 40 years. Trying to think if there's anything else I can say. Yeah, so that's me. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's just a part of it. And you know, I have a responsibility to the people here, to the people who came before us, to the people in the future, and I take that responsibility seriously.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. How are you qualified to speak for the 9th District?
Yeah, I think qualification, it's an interesting one because ultimately that comes down to what the voters decide is qualification. I like to believe that because I've decided to try to go all across the 9th District, to talk to people where they're at, to be where they're in their communities, just to listen. I don't believe I'm any special than anybody else in this room. I simply just chose to believe that we need to be the change we need to see in the world. And so I got out there. I was the first person to start running in this race 6 months before anybody else. I decided to step up because I saw that our country was on the line. This is what we're dealing with today. And I like to believe that my background matters a little bit. I'm a software engineer, been doing that for almost 10 years. I know a lot about software development and AI, technology, and the data centers, and that's the future that we're dealing with right now, is big tech owning everything and trying to take yet more. We need to be able to have a Congress that understands what it's like to understand big tech, to not have to have a consultant tell you what it means, how the AI works, or what it's going to do. I don't need someone to tell me, here's what to think, or here's how it's going to affect a community. I know how that's going to work, and I'll be able to ask the right questions in the right moments for that stuff. You know, I grew up in a time in America that's been very interesting. When I was 6, I remember 9/11. That was one of my earliest memories. In 2008, our family lost our home in the housing crisis. I know what it's like to fall through the gaps. I know what it's like to be neglected. I know what it's like to not have health insurance. I know what it's like to go without school lunch. I know what it's like to have to struggle and figure it out, while the system supports the richest of the rich and everybody else is left to figure it out for themselves. That's not the way it's supposed to work in a country that's of the people, by the people, for the people. We deserve better than that. So I don't know if that makes me qualified, but that's why I'm fighting.
So I believe the question was, why do you feel you're qualified to represent the 9th? Okay, thank you. I appreciate this question, and I think that first I'm proud at the answers that all three of us have given tonight. I think it is time that we have 3 progressive, non-establishment choices to choose from. But we also know, like was said earlier, this is the most important election of our lifetime. And so what that means, and the work in the 9th is a little bit different than anywhere else in Virginia, and honestly in a lot of places, because we haven't invested as a party here previously. And I know that because I've spent my whole life here. I've been a blue dot. I don't know if any of you have ever been the only Democrat in a room and just had to say something because you're the only one who will, but I've been that person. You know, I've recently had my qualifications questioned because I'm a farmer. And so what does a farmer know? And I said, well, I'm a farmer. I'm a business owner. I also ran a nonprofit and worked in hunger prevention. I've been a foster mom. But at the end of the day, you know what farmers do? They never walk away from their work. They know there's always more to be done. You know, this year we saw that clearly in my home county of Bedford. We had an elementary school that was trying to be illegally closed in 7 days. 7 days, almost 400 children were going to be rerouted to another school. I'm not a lawyer, but you know what I did? I went home and taught myself how to file a lawsuit. Guess what? That school is going to be open next year, and we're still fighting for its permanent future. It is time. Thank you. It is time that we have people who are willing to make the hard decisions and to stand up. And it has been at a cost, let me tell you. If you're business owners in here and you've had to wonder whether it's safe to put up a sign or whether to let people know that you're a Democrat, I've lived with that. We've had our family business be doxxed. We deal with trolls. But I'm telling you that standing up for this district has always been worth it, and I always will. Thank you.
The next question begins with Adam Murphy. Why do you think you are the most qualified candidate to beat Morgan Griffith?
It's kind of the same question as the last one, isn't it? Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. I believe we have a better platform. I believe we represent the interests of Southwest Virginia better, but not because I've been talking at people, but because I've been going to their communities and talking to them, asking them what they think. There are policies that I support that were literally suggested to me because someone said, well, have you ever thought about doing that? That's what a government of the people, by the people, for the people is supposed to be. That you show up, that you listen, that you poll your own district to see what they have. I've seen the lovely talent in Southwest Virginia. There's a lot of skill here, but we are not invested in, we're not seen. And I think when it comes right down to it, we must show up for the people of Southwest Virginia. And I think my background, understanding how AI and technology is going to affect us and how to properly regulate that, understanding that we need to bring job opportunity to all of our district, that we need to have rural healthcare improved, our rural EMS systems funding updated. There's so many things that the 9th District has to do. And the simple crux of it is that we go door to door and we talk to people and we ask for their vote, and people get really excited about that. Because right now, people are tired of politics as they've been. Status quo politics isn't going to change the 9th District. We have to be bold. We have to do something new. We have to be willing to try something new. That's what we're asking the Republicans. Vote for us not because we're a Democrat, but because we show up, because we will represent you, because we will take care of our communities. I think that it's really just that straightforward. I believe that we are the most qualified to take on Morgan Griffith because we show up. And I have had real conversations with multiple people, seeing that these people can be talked to. We are not against each other. It's not the red team or the blue team. We need to come back together as the American people, as the red, white, and blue team. Thank you.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yes. Why do you think you are the most qualified candidate to beat Morgan Griffith?
You know, I want to establish, you know, I think that I don't want it to get lost. I don't have any cool props. You know, I met a really cool baby, but her mom wouldn't let me take her today. But I think that what needs to be said is not only, you know, am I a product of this district? I've lived in this district my whole life, but I'm also a person who cares about this district regardless of your partisanship. And I think that what it comes down to, it's not just how we show up and we campaign, because we're door knocking, we have volunteers, we're having the real conversations, we're doing that work too. That is just the work of campaigning. But what we're also doing is we're not going into communities like Wytheville and saying that we're leading the conversation and that we're the expert, but we are going to talk to the individuals who've been fighting that fight. We're empowering them and we're bringing them to the table. You know, I've said this and I'll keep saying it. I think Morgan Griffith has already addressed who he's concerned about. You know, I have pushed him, we have all pushed him, but he only responds to one person in one campaign, and that is me. We need someone who can actually hold him accountable, but we also need someone who actually has a track record in this district of serving, of showing up long before they ever ask for somebody's vote. And I do think that's what sets me apart. Thank you.
So warning, you're about to get a sports analogy. So I think what sets me apart is a track record. You know, being around for as long as I've been around, I've worked a long time. You have a record, a long record to look at. You know, being a United Methodist clergy person, ordained elder in the United Methodist Church is not an easy thing to achieve. And to stay a United Methodist clergy person, you have to toe the line, so to speak. You have an oversight committee. It's the same thing with law. You are being watched. People can complain. You can be disbarred. You can be suspended. You know, I've been married for 44 years, and I'm getting in kind of values and responsibility and that sort of thing, and loyalty. Been married to the same person for 44 years, not saying anything against anybody who hasn't been, or if you've been married, however many times you've been married. But I think that says something about who I am. But I think as far as Morgan Griffith goes, look at the tail of the tape. That's what they have in boxing. You know, you get two boxers together, they have before the fight, they have the weigh-in, and they do the measurements and all that kind of thing. And I think when you stack the two of us up together, we are more on the same sort of in the same field. He and I both went to Emory and Henry. We were there at the same time. He has a law degree. I have a law degree. This is a legislative job that we are applying for with the 9th District. I think the advantage, the reach that I have over him is the understanding of religious people and having studied and worked with congregations. And I think that is one of the things that I can make inroads into the Republican Party on, because a lot of their positions.
Okay, the last question in this segment, and then the next segment will be the audience questions. This question goes to Joy Powers first.
Thank you.
Let's say that you win the Democratic primary. How does your campaign pivot to focus on beating Morgan Griffith?
I'm going to be transparent here. If any of us on this stage are not already communicating with Republican voters, then we're already losing. And so I do think that we do have to pivot. But right now, of course, we're going out, we're knocking doors, and we have to secure the Democratic primary as candidates. But we cannot wait till August to engage these voters and show up in the places and work with them in the way they need to be worked with. One thing that I want to make really clear is we do not have to pivot to the center to appease Republicans or to get things done. And so instead, it's having those hard conversations. It's going into those spaces and being able to talk to people. A great example is Andy Bashir. He's able to win in coal country and MAGA country. Why? It's because of the way he shows up, and he is rooted in that community, and he knows and he respects that community. And so for us, we are maintaining and going to keep our platform the same because we believe that's what delivers for Southwest Virginia. But then we were already going to continue, and we will expand our outreach into the Republican. And that means it means knocking on more Republican doors than Democrat doors. It means going out there and doing the heart change work that we have to do.
Well, I think a part of the answer to that question is that the environment would change. Pivoting to face Morgan Griffith from the three of us running against each other, the environment would change. There would just be one Democrat. So hopefully Democrats would come together. There would be a whole lot more attention on that person, who I hope would be me. Hopefully the other two would support that person, which I would do if it was one of the other people. So you would have the focus and you would have more support as an individual. And pivoting would be pivoting to go after Morgan Griffith, to call him out on his poor record and his not being out in the community and his hyper-partisanship, and to try to get him to debate face-to-face on a stage. That would be a priority. And so, I think there would be a pivoting in that way. I think just the environment, the atmosphere would change. There would be a whole lot more attention on that individual, a whole lot more press, a lot more opportunity to talk to Republicans. Because at this point, we're going out, we're meeting people, but at that point you get press, you've got TV, you've got radio, you've got people interviewing you, you've got a chance for people to look at just you and hear what your message is. And you can talk to those people and talk to them about Morgan Griffith and how he's betrayed them, how he doesn't represent them, how he sold them out with the big, beautiful bill, how he could have held out for stuff that he didn't hold out for, like Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, who held out to help the people of Alaska and who got the $25,000 health transformation fund increased to $50,000 because she held out and wouldn't vote for it. He could have done that.
I haven't had a chance to answer. Sorry. My bad. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Absolutely. Let's say that you win the Democratic primary. Okay. How does your campaign pivot to focus on beating Morgan Griffith?
It's not really going to have to pivot. We have a really wonderful data scientist out of Wytheville who's analyzed all 363 precincts of the 9th District. I know where the most Democratic voter turnout is, where we need to focus, and all these things. The beautiful thing about that map is it also shows us where there's people who are registered but didn't vote in 2022 or 2024, and areas where there's people we can go reach and pick up, or people who maybe are registered but didn't vote, and all these other things that are going to be really critical to actually knocking Morgan Griffith out of the House come November. So right now, we're getting to test our thesis case for it right now, right? And there's a lot of groups we've met along the way that are just waiting, hoping that we win this election, so they're going to jump in and help us canvass, help us door knock, help us reach people. The math is not that complex in the 9th District to flip it. It's not that many votes. 2 out of every 3 people do not vote in this district on average. That's 400,000 plus people. That's a lot of people. You flip a few Republicans, you get a few more people voting, and you're going to win the 9th district. It's not a question. You just have to be able to show up, get the energy to people, and get out there. And when you do, you're going to win. So when it comes to Morgan Griffith, we don't need to pivot. We are going to be really, really mean to him, I will say. And there's going to be, we hopefully have some cool little campaigns that we'll get to do. But the reality is, we're not going to have to change any of our beliefs, any of our stances. We're going full steam ahead because this is a moment, like I said earlier, we got to lean into what we believe, not back away from it. People will join us. The Democratic Party just needs to meet this moment.
Okay, we are now going to transition to questions from the audience and from those of you that have private messaged me, either on Facebook or on my cell phone. The first question goes back to Doug Crockett. What do you believe the future looks like for the new Appalachian economy? The utilization of data centers, advanced manufacturing, or something else?
The future for the Appalachian region or the 9th district?
The Appalachian economy. So I would say the 9th district.
Okay. What I would expect and hope for would be a transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, such as what's happening in some places around the 9th district, where we would try to go in, use an abandoned coal mine for solar power, also transition from coal for energy to coal for other purposes. And then, data centers, I believe in a moratorium on data centers that's been proposed by Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Congress. I think there needs to be a halt to make sure that we are taking care of the risks. I think to me, it's kind of akin to nuclear energy in that it's got a lot of great potential benefit, but it's got a lot of also terrible consequences that could come out of it. Loss of jobs, hurting the environment in different ways, water affecting the power grid. But I am for jobs, and if we can deal with those, we might need to have a commission like the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for data centers that would make sure that those things are being taken care of. Data centers they do create jobs. I know that's an issue of how many jobs they create, but there was just an article in the paper about there are also related businesses that relate to data centers. So you don't just get a data center, you get other things with that. So, I'm not absolutely opposed to data centers, but I do believe there needs to be a moratorium to work out the issues. So I think those are two important components. As I said before, the growing parts of the economy, franchising, healthcare, manufacturing, all of those need to have a part.
Earlier, I mentioned Showcase Southwest Virginia and how we would need to connect our economies to the 21st century. So for me, it doesn't look like data centers. And I actually do like the idea of a technology commission that kind of regulates technology a little more actively rather than being 10 years behind on everything like we seem to be today. Actually, more like 30 years behind on everything. We need to do far more than just technology, though. We'll bring some tech to the area, but it's not going to be data centers. We need to focus on some advanced manufacturing, computer chips. America needs to consider that a national security risk to be able to have these chips produced in our country. There'll be other industries that I'd like us to bring on. We were talking earlier about military briefly. Drones is going to be a huge changing military force in the future, and I really think Southwest Virginia could be a leader in that. We could be a pioneer for things like healthcare with drones, as well as manufacturing them. So that could be a really big benefit. There's also a lot of rail lines that I'd like us to reconnect to, potentially use rail lines as mobile health transport. So, you'd come down to the city center when the rail cars come in for certain scanning. If you're in Dickinson County, that's one of the few counties that doesn't have a 4-lane road in this district, semi and certain equipment is not going to be able to effectively get into certain areas if you're relying on them coming to you. So there's a whole bunch of things I think we need to look at. Ecotourism, we need to look at putting solar farms on the top of reclaimed mine land. There's a lot that we can do in the 9th District, but it's not going to be one piece of the economy. We're going to have a multifaceted economic engine that is all our own, based here in Southwest Virginia and owned by the people of Southwest Virginia.
One of the central tenets to our legislative plan is that, excuse me, Southwest Virginia needs and should be a good home for us all. It is heartbreaking to hear young people talk about how they have to leave their home communities. That's devastating. It's also devastating to hear parents and proud grandparents tell me about everything that their kid can achieve, but they can't afford to come back here and do the same thing because there's not fair wages. And so we know those problems exist, but how do we actually fix them? And so I think that as we look into what our next economy is going to be, we have to make sure it's serving those people here at home, creating opportunities that are organic and truly grassroots. I mentioned that we need to rework our federal funding programs to work better for small businesses, and I believe that. Another thing that, I'm really passionate about is career and technical education. We have to make sure that career and technical education is part of our new economy, that we are able to use that as a vehicle and a tool to connect young people to jobs and industries here. Too often we'll see, just a standard CTE program. And what we're hearing is, these other areas in Northern Virginia and around the Richmond are having these advanced STEM classes come. If we want computer chips to be made, if we want manufacturing here, the first thing those companies ask for is, what does your education and career and technical education look like? We have to make sure that we are building the infrastructure that we need. I'm really excited. We've been talking to some union members about how well CTE and apprenticeships pair up together. That's a huge opportunity here. But the key is that the economy in the future of Southwest Virginia has to benefit the people here at home. I think that one of the greatest examples of American colonialism is what happens here in the coal fields, and we can never let it happen again. Thank you.
The second question begins with Adam Murphy. Virginia recently enacted new firearms restrictions, and Senators Kane and Warner have introduced legislation to take Virginia's gun laws nationwide through the Virginia Plan to Reduce Gun Violence Act. Do you support Kane and Warner's efforts to make Virginia's restrictions federal law nationwide, and why or why not?
This is actually a question I get asked by people on the campaign trail, too. I am pro-Second Amendment. I myself own firearms. I think there are limits to every right that we have in this country. You can't go into the movie theater and scream fire, and I don't think people should be able to own rockets or artillery or other crazy automatic weapons. The restrictions we have on place on a lot of these are already pretty good. I don't particularly like security theater when it comes to magazine size restrictions or the look of a firearm. I think there are far more effective ways to handle firearm-related incidents, whether it be suicide or murders. And I think the best way to go about that, you've heard me say it before, Medicare for all. Because when we guarantee mental health services as part of healthcare, I personally believe, as we've seen after 1990 with Columbine, that our country, a lot of people are not being seen, and a lot of people are falling through the gaps. And I think if we had mental health services all throughout our country, I think we would find that we would see a natural reduction in mass firearm-related incidents. We'd see a reduction in suicide-related firearm incidents. This is what I tell people out on the campaign trail. This is how I've gotten some conservatives to be like, wow, okay, you get it. Boucher used to be pro-gun in this district, too. We have to recognize that we have to represent the people of Southwest Virginia, not just talk about what we think is right. And in this instance, I personally agree with it, but I also understand why people get frustrated by it. So I think we, as Democrats, need to focus on the things that make the most sense to everybody. Economic realities, healthcare, job opportunities, pay, and our communities being invested in before investing in special interests or countries and wars overseas. That's what people want to see. That's what I'm focused on. Thank you.
Excuse me, I had a sinus infection last week. This is a great question, and I think it's really important here in the 9th District because, quite frankly, I know I live about 30 or 40 minutes away from a deputy's response. You know, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I would not have moved into my home as a 24-year-old single female if I was not a firearm owner. So I say that to say that I understand the personal safety aspects. But I also worked in the firearm industry for about 3 years. I was an ATF compliance manager for a firearm manufacturer and sales business. And what my job was literally to do was to run the background checks of people trying to buy firearms. And I would say probably, you know, depending on the season, at least 3 times a month. I would see caller ID come up on the phone, and it was the Virginia State Police. And they were calling to tell me that whoever's name I just punched in that was right in front of me, they were calling to tell me that that person needed to be picked up by a trooper. And it was my job to sit there and be nice and smile with this abuser or this criminal, whatever their background was, until the state police got there. And unfortunately, in Virginia, and in this country, those people that I watched get taken out of my store in handcuffs, as they should, they could legally go and buy a firearm from a private individual or a gun show any day. We have got to close the loophole of universal background checks. That is something that, you know, I firmly believe that no gun legislation should be made without law enforcement at the table and actively being a part of making those decisions. I think that's where we went wrong in Richmond this year, if I'm perfectly honest. But something that I will not back down from is we absolutely do need universal background checks for gun purchases in this country. Thank you.
So of the gun-focused gun safety measures, I think those in Virginia that were passed are good. I don't think we should make it easier for people to buy guns. We have so many guns in this country. And I think, you know, the idea of extending the limitations on having a weapon to a hospital and prohibiting that, I think that's a good thing. So I think those measures that we passed in Virginia would be good to have nationwide. I think automatic weapons should continue to be banned, semi-automatic weapons. There should be some limits on those, the place and the purpose. And then I think there should be some limits on who, of course, can get a gun, as we're talking about background checks. But, you know, they've done studies now on what causes gun violence. And, you know, it's not always guns. There are socioeconomic issues where there's the most gun violence. And not just because I'm black, but they have studies do show that it is due to some degree to racial discrimination. And so, you know, our administration, of course, wants to ignore the fact that there is even race and pretend that even though at the same time they're doing racist things. But I think that's a place where we should focus and try and deal with those socioeconomic issues. And going back to the previous question, I just want to say about what the economy would look like in the future. One that I forgot, which is a big one for me, is tourism. You know, I lived in Kansas for a while, and I had, you know, just grown up. I was pretty young. I tell people where I was from, they say, oh, it's so beautiful there. Of course, to me, it was just rocks and hills and at that age. But now that I've come back, I can really appreciate the beauty in driving around this district. And I think tourism is something that we need to focus on for the future.
And I am being mindful of time. I have a list of questions from audience members. If this last question is not your question, because I'm getting ready to pose my last question, please make sure you come up and speak to the candidates afterwards and also have an opportunity to talk with them about your question. So the final question tonight, which begins with Joy Powers. What is your position on continuing to fund military aid to Israel?
I want to say this very plainly. Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. He is currently using American dollars. He is using American dollars to use white phosphorus against civilians. He's using forced starvation against civilians, and it's absolutely egregious, and it must stop. America cannot be complicit in this, and I will tell you that until the Democrats in this party actually wake up to that reality, we will continue to lose elections. Thank you.
I think we should continue to provide military aid to Israel up to the point that they can defend themselves, not to the point where they have the arms to go in and do what they're doing. It's just awful that we have any part in what's happening in the Middle East with Israel at this point. Over 70,000 people in Gaza dead. You know, what happened to Israel was terrible. It was horrible. It was barbaric. But we should not turn around and do something barbaric back. I think there was a way to deal with that without what's happening at this point. So I think they've proven that with unlimited military weapons, they just can't be trusted. You know, I grew up a little brother. I had two older brothers. If I had gone out and started trying to beat up people, I wouldn't have expected them to come to my aid and keep telling me, hey, yeah, go ahead, get them, and help me build up, get bigger muscles so I could go out and beat up more people. That's just not the way it works, and I think Israel needs to understand that. I appreciate the position they're in. They are a lone country in the midst of a place where there are people that want to see them gone. So I do think that they need, the ability to defend themselves, but not that we just keep providing more arms and more arms and more arms for the things that are being done. It's just horrible, and I hate to be in any way responsible for that as a citizen, as a congressperson, as a human being. And I would hope that we could convince people around the 9th District of the same thing.
So I definitely agree that Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal and he should be tried. It's interesting. Do you remember when President Trump invited Netanyahu to the White House? There was a very small part of me that was hopeful. This is where he's going to arrest him. Didn't happen. The reality is, when it comes to Gaza, I don't believe the United States provide a single ounce of aid. I make no distinction between defensive or offensive weapons. If you give a nation the opportunity to defend itself so it can posture aggressively offensively, we've given them offensive weaponry. We must give $0 in aid to Israel as a way to make them straighten up their behavior. We have to end the Gazan genocide and ethnic cleansing. It has to stop. I'm of the personal belief that the United States should be doing everything in its power to force Israel to stop their armed conflict and their encroachment into the Gaza Strip and to Lebanon. We do not want the Greater Israel Project. We do not need to support the Greater Israel Project. And the only president dumb enough to have accepted it was Donald Trump. We must treat Israel as they are. They are not a very good ally of the American people. And then because of that, we must hold them accountable until their behavior change. No more aid for Israel until the genocide ends and Netanyahu is in prison.
Okay, so obviously the candidates did not get to introduce themselves tonight, but we did want to give them an opportunity to make a closing statement. And so we're actually going to go in order, alphabetical order again. They each have 3 minutes for a closing statement. So first, Doug Crockett.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you all of you for being here. It is a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to participate. It's something that I'll be grateful for a long time. And that's a big part of who I am, being gratefulness. That's why I have lived my life the way I've lived it for the last 40 years, because there came a time in my life where people bailed me out, and Almighty bailed me out of a situation that I'd gotten myself into. And if that had not happened, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today. I would either be probably or have been in prison or underground, not in the zinc mine where I worked when I was in college in Ivanhoe. So I live life from a position of gratitude. It's a debt that I owe. And after 40 years, I have not made a dent in that debt. And that gratefulness is a very motivating thing. That's why I'm here with you tonight. That's why I want to serve in Congress, because I want to continue to try to help people and do my best to do that. Continue to try to be there and stand in, especially for those who are struggling more than others, whether it's health care or affordability or jobs or people on Medicaid, because I believe that's what patriotism is. My model for that is Martin Luther King Jr., who took his faith and applied that to what it means to be a citizen of this country, and fought all around the country for against an unjust war, for people who were economically disadvantaged, and also, yes, of course, for people who were racially discriminated against. And so that's what drives me. We have a reckless congressman, or at least a negligent congressman at this point, because we have a reckless president. And anybody that enables that type of behavior has to be either reckless or negligent themselves. I think if you look at my track record, my resume, I think I would stack up good against and could beat Morgan Griffith. As I said, this is a service. I'm a person who believes in service, and I would want to be a servant in the 9th District, to go to Washington, to represent the people here, to fight for you. And again, my slogan is unity for American unity, maturity, and prosperity. We need unity for prosperity. We don't want prosperity without American maturity. I know the struggle, I know the law, and I know the people. And they're my people. And I believe I can cross the barrier from Democrat to Republican with them as well.
Thank you for moderating. Thank you for hosting the forum, Washington County Democrats. It's been nice. It's been a really good night, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to be in front of all of you tonight. You know, I've been running since May of 2025, over a year. I've been to every county and independent city in the 9th District. I've been there multiple times. We've been talking to people from all across the district, listening, learning, trying to understand what people see and are concerned about here in the 9th District. And you heard some of that here tonight. Fear about people leaving or not staying because we don't have the opportunities, not having enough of a living wage to be able to afford the life that they deserve here, and not having services and infrastructure that is desperately needed. You know, I got into running for this race after the Doge event. I got really frustrated as a software engineer that our federal government failed the most basic security test it possibly could have. I would have been fired had I let people into my system the way Doge let them in. There should have been a vote in the Senate, all these other things, and there wasn't. And there still isn't. One of the reasons we're going to be able to get Elon Musk in the long run. It's that type of anger that I think brings a lot of us here to this room today. That we have seen a system fail us over many years. And right now it might be the worst we've ever seen. But there were a lot of events that brought us to the moment that we have to deal with this in the first place. And I think I want to leave with you a message of hope. Because, you know, when I first started this race, no one thought a Democrat could win. They're like, oh, good luck, buddy. But people were happy I was running because no one else had stepped up and no one else normally steps up. So it's great that we're having a primary here tonight, right? But we have to continue to show up for people throughout the 9th District. We have to continue to talk to everyone And I've seen the proof. I don't have to tell you I need to talk to conservative voters. I've done it. I've converted them. I know for a fact that 10 years ago, the conversations we're having today, maybe they wouldn't listen to me. Maybe they wouldn't care. Maybe they tell, shut up, liberal, get out of here. But today, in this America, people are willing to listen because the damage hits us all. It doesn't take that many votes to change this district, and there's a lot of groups that are wanting to get active for the first time in a long time because they know they are getting neglected. Southwest Virginia has a history of neglect that it does not deserve. It has powered this country years over. It has fed so many. It is so incredibly frustrating to see so many hardworking people left behind by our system. But I'm telling you, it is going to change. When we win this primary, when we go on to the November election, we're going to beat Morgan Griffith. He is easy to beat. Republicans wouldn't even like him if he wasn't a Republican, if there was no R next to the name. So I'm asking that you join me in our movement to build a future we all deserve. Thank you.
What a great evening. Thank you for moderating, and thank you, Washington County Democrats, for not only this event, but for some great questions. This might be the best and most diverse set we've had yet. But I just want to say, you know, being in a room like this is extremely powerful. Like I said, you know, I've lived here, and I was a young person in this district who I was the only Democrat in my civics class. I was the only one in my government class. And I yearned to be in rooms like these with leaders and community leaders and people like yourselves. You know, and so when I say that, you know, I am a farm kid. I was raised in 4-H and FFA. I grew up showing cows and goats. But more than that, I was raised at a bipartisan kitchen table. And so I had a conservative mom who's never voted for Donald Trump, although she did make me listen to Rush Limbaugh for hours as a child. I joke and tell her that's why I'm a Democrat now. But seriously, and then I had a dad who was a Jimmy Carter style Democrat, led by his faith first. And when we sat down at the table at night and we talked about how we were going to move Jim, our longtime mechanic, you know, and how we could boost his wages or get him the health care he needed, you know, I remember before ACA was passed, I grew up, my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer when I was in 2nd grade. They gave him a year to live. He's at home babysitting right now. Hallelujah. But I will never forget watching my mom cry nights and nights on end, and I didn't know it then, but she told me later it's because she had to cash in her last college savings bond to pay for my dad's chemo. In this world, we cannot continue to put people through that, and they're putting that pedal to the metal and pushing us straight back there. So when I'm talking about representing this district, working for this district, it's not new. You know, if you go and quite frankly, you know, my desire isn't to be a politician. It literally is to be a servant, because that's what I was taught to do. It's what I've always done. And unfortunately, and to fix this, we've got to send somebody to Congress who understands and who knows. And so we have, you know, we've got the field plan, and we're excited about our campaign numbers and metrics, but what we're more excited about is the heart and the root of this campaign. And we don't just have Democrats on our team. We have Republicans on our team. Because remember that school that I talked about saving that's going to be open next year? Every single one of those teachers, except for one, was a Republican voter. Not only are they voting for me this year, but they're also volunteering and telling their neighbors. It's why we have to show up and do the work to earn the trust.
Well, let's give one more round of applause to all of our candidates. Thanks to all of you for being here. Have a great evening.